Hello, Legacy Builders, and welcome back to another episode of the Legacy Pregame Podcast. I'm Marcella Mollon-Williams, behavioral financial advisor, mindset coach, and legacy strategist for first-generation legacy wealth builders.
And I am your co-host, Mark Mollon, investment advisor, legacy strategist, and together we are your legacy building duo, guiding first-gen high-income earners like you from financial wealth to generational impact, one intentional move at a time.
So, Mark, here's where today's conversation is going to begin.
Let's do it.
We are talking about financial literacy versus financial intelligence. So basically, you can know what to do with money and still feel completely overwhelmed trying to do it. That is the key difference between financial literacy and financial intelligence. So to explain it even more, literacy is a roadmap. Intelligence is navigating when you hit detours, you're tired, and someone is yelling at you from the back seat.
Oh, that one is so relatable, right? The detours are bad enough, and when you're tired and you get that side seat or backseat driver, that can be a lot. But at the same time, Marcelo, the relevance of what you're saying here is that, financial literacy is that foundation. But, what goes or what gets you there to your destination is the financial intelligence. So we're going to unpack this so we can have more meaning, understanding behind this, because here's the thing. We understand, Marcelo, that you can read all the books, take all the classes, follow all the influencers, and still make emotionally driven money moves that literally sabotages your financial future.
It's so important to understand that. So let me just define it clearly. Let me make sure we're all on the same page with this because of where we're about to go with this. And we want to make sure everyone truly understands it. So again, if we look at financial literacy, it is what you know, right, Mark? Financial literacy, it's the knowledge we obtain, everything that we pour into us, the books, all these is what you know.
Yes.
But financial intelligence is how you behave with what you know, especially when those emotions show up. That's where we need it. If you're human, those emotions are showing up. So financial intelligence is your ability to make smart, responsible, value-based decisions about money when you're faced, not if, but when you're faced with difficult to deal with and competing emotions. That is going to happen. Like I said, as long as you're a human being with blood flowing through your veins, those emotions are going to hit you at the most inconvenient times, especially when there are financial decisions that need to be made. And the feelings like anger, anxiety, shame, or like we talk about, just being straight, plain tired.
Exactly. Marcella, I have to add a piece here because so many times, it's a scale and you have certain individuals that are just highly emotional. And for many of us, we assume that when we're talking about emotions, that your first thought is these highly emotional individuals. And you can easily say, well, I'm not affected by emotions. I'm not like those highly emotional individuals. But you said it, Marcella. Everyone is impacted by emotions, even if it's at a smaller scale. It can happen to you at a breaking point, at a stress point. You don't know. You just may not be as susceptible to someone that's highly emotional, but there will be a time, as long as you live on this planet, there will be a time where your emotions will come in and it can drive you either in a major way or it can drive you in a hidden way. You're not even aware of it. So, and that's why I love the term when you say, even when you're tired, your emotions can get the best of you. I definitely fall into that category, that when I'm tired, I tend to be more emotional. And so we have to understand here that that's the difference of knowing, for example, that, hey, when I'm investing, I should buy low and sell high. Everyone knows that. Right. But when we look at the market, and let's say the market's going down, you have a downward swing in the market, or a term that everyone hates to hear, a crash in the market. Can you still maintain that same philosophy of buying low and selling high when your emotions are telling you, get out, get out the market, So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
No, yeah,
exactly.
that's the key to it, right, Mark? Because
Yes.
again, we can't pretend that the markets don't fluctuate. So we have to be able to stay on top of our emotions. The thing that we can control, the only thing we can control is us. And that's why what you're saying is so important. Knowing the difference between knowing, in this example, buy low, sell high, and doing is
Hmm.
what matters. So, and then we've seen it. We've seen it so many times before, right, Mark? We've seen
Yeah.
it with people who know the rules and they break them because fear takes over. Because the
Yes.
emotions, name the emotion, but typically
Right.
we see
Right.
right, but typically we see that is when fear takes over. Mark, I'm going to have you talk about a particular couple, a particular scenario we went through that I think would be, that we both agree would be so great to share with our audience. And as we're talking about financial intelligence versus financial literacy.
Yeah. So, and we picked this couple because they represent a good example of, not this isolated situation. No, it's a very general case. So what we're going to do here is we're going to share this story about this high net worth couple that we work with, and to keep it, private, we're just going to call these couples, these individuals, Lauren and David. So if your name is Lauren or David, we're not talking about you. Okay, so we're just randomly using these names now. So let's dive into this. Now, on paper, they're doing very well. And one of the things I want to point out here is that many people think you have to work with a financial advisor because, or when you work with a financial advisor, it's because your finances are out of order, or you have no idea what you're doing, or it's usually this negative connotation. But in this case, they were on paper financially fit. They were fine. The husband, he's in real estate, excuse me, as a real estate investor with multiple properties and a thriving business. So he's good. So much so that the wife stepped away from her corporate career so that she can manage the family. So she switched careers from corporate to now family, the family structure, to make sure she's there for the children and to support her husband. So here's the thing, right? When it comes to the family unit, when it comes to the finances, right? That the money they're not broke. They're coming together and they're working with us, not because they're broke, not because they didn't have any money. It's because they were breaking, right? So, Marcella, when we talk about being broke and being, and going through a breaking point, this is kind of your area of expertise, right?
Yes, yes. And that is really important because it wasn't about breaking the bank. That
Right.
was not why, as you just mentioned, Mark, why they came to us. That was not their pain point, their pressure.
Yes.
Where they were breaking was in the areas of trust, in the area of communication, and Mark alluded to that, the importance of the communication, and in the confidence and confidence. And that's a combination of the confidence in themselves and the confidence working with one another. Both need to be intact. Communication must be intact for you to thrive, in order to build generational wealth, in order to stabilize your finances right now. Communication must be intact, and you must be able to trust yourself and trust one another if you're a couple.
I love how you said it starts with trusting yourself first. And that's a big one because we're talking about couples, but some of our clients, they're single. There's just them. And guess what? You still have to trust yourself. And
Right.
so, and with going back to Lauren and David, Marcella, one of my favorite components of what we do is the moment where we're just having a conversation, just getting to know these individuals. And so for Lauren, she told us during our first session that she feels like she's failing when it comes to money. And it's because she feels like she just doesn't understand the way money works as well as her husband. And it has her feeling like, they're bleeding emotionally and financially, especially from her perspective. It's like, hey, every time her husband's having a rough week, next thing you know, he's spending money. And for her, that's a challenge. But then on the other side, we have that conversation with David. And he admits, doesn't really think about it being an emotional spending. In his own words, he works hard and he wants to enjoy it, right? Hey, I work hard,
Right.
busting my butt. I should at least enjoy it, right? So you see the perspectives here. And I'm going to be very clear, because sometimes people think this, Marcella. We're not here to take sides. Okay, it's about understanding where everyone's coming from. There's no right or wrong. This is your perspective. This is your perspective. Now, how do we come in and assess these two individuals to become a unit? And again, Marcella, I want to pull from you because you're the one that makes this thing pop here. Well, we work together, but you set the foundation. Okay, you do set the foundation.
I appreciate it, but there's no me without you. So it's so important to understand this conversation, and I'm really hoping the listeners are getting it. Mark, you talked about just them being in a safe space where they can just kind of really express what they're feeling. And here's the thing, what they're feeling and what they're seeing is on the surface level, and that's good. But there's layers to this. And underneath this layer for both of them was a history of scarcity. And that is for so many of us, especially if you come from a disadvantaged community. Scarcity is a huge underlying source for financial anxiety, and there's a slew of situations that impact your relationship with money. So when we look at David, as Mark, you just explained his emotional spending, well, he grew up in a household where money meant control. So when he finally made it, his spending was his rebellion. It was his proof that he made it. It was his way of saying, look, this is what I have the power, I have the control, I can do what I want, because this is what he needed. And then Lauren, she grew up with financial anxiety, stressors that were in her household, with communication that she saw between parents and their relationship with money. So for her, saving money was the only way to feel safe. And you can just imagine how that played out in their marriage. Just these two dynamics where she needed to save to feel safe, and he needed to spend to feel in control. So we had to go through a process with Mark, needless to say.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners and watchers are like, yes, I could relate.
Like, seriously. And because I was going to say, this is a norm. I don't want you to think that this is an unusual circumstance. No, this is quite common for us to see when we're coaching couples. So and it's the joy in being able to do this and to help walk our clients through this process. So
Marcella, sorry, let me add one other thing here, because it's so relevant to what you're saying here, because this is why it's so important that, as Marcella and I are sharing from experience, we have to realize here is that we're this neutral party, because so many times I've heard time and time and time again that the individuals are trying to come together and try to fix it, but from their one perspective. So if you're someone that's a saver, you're trying to fix the problem, believing that everyone should be saving. And if you're someone that's a spender, you're trying to fix the problem by having everyone be a spender, right? So, and that doesn't work, because you're only seeing it from one side only. And this is why, and Marcella, I'll let you come back here and share. What you're going to share is so important, because it's not about taking sides. It's about going through those layers and having each individual, in this case here, understand each other. So Marcella, I'm gonna be quiet and let you finish. I just had to add that part there.
Oh, look, you're good. I like what you're adding. And you brought such an important point, because you can't be inside of the issue, inside of the problem, and try to fix it without an external view. You can't make that make sense. So that, again, is where we come in. And we come in and especially in Lauren and David's case, we took them through our core values assessment, which is so important, especially as Mark is able to work with clients so much better in the financial planning part when he really understands the client's core values. But we won't go into that right now. So going through the core values assessment with Lauren and David, they both went through the process of identifying their top values. So they were able to see and reflect on what was important to themselves and to each other. That starts with a whole eye-opening situation.
Yes.
For some people, it's a revelation. Others, oh yeah, they knew that about each other. Great. In their cases, David and Lauren, it was extremely helpful to see what each others were working with, really, and bringing to the relationship. And then I helped them to identify their core values as a partnership, a unit, the two becoming one. So that is why you have to have that partnership values. So this is where you see, and this is where they were able to see when they were able to combine their values and really come up with that unit, core values. It was like combining forces, joining forces, seeing what I like to call their superpowers come out. Those values complemented each other, and it just created so much more power for them to grow and learn together.
Marcel, I'm telling you, this is something again we see time and time again.
Yeah.
The importance of not looking at their individual perspectives, or in this case here, once they discover their values, and thinking that you have the right one and you have the right one. It's unifying those values to a household unit in this example, and creating something they couldn't do by themselves.
Yes.
That's the thing here, right? So many times we look at each other, it's like all you bring in is weaknesses or negative energy, or whatever excuse you give to, not seeing the value, the value proposition that can come together and really help achieve this financial goal. So in this case here, you help them identify their core values, but it doesn't stop there. Okay, it does not stop there. The work is just beginning. So here's a little practice that we teach our Flex clients, and it can be transforming for your relationship when it comes to money. So once again, I'm gonna thank Marcella for her acronyms and her letters and everything. So in this case here, we have the 3 P's. So we have the pause, we have the process, and we have the practice. Okay, so if I recommend, if you're in a place where you can write this down, please do type it in, whatever you need to do. But it's the 3 P's: pause, process, and practice. Now, Marcella, let's dive into these 3 P's here.
Let's do this. As we guided Lauren and David through these 3 P's, we started with pause. And you know about that power pause. I think we mentioned it on a previous episode, the power of that pause. It's so important. So when it comes to David and Lauren, they agreed to a 24-hour waiting period on purchases over a certain threshold. So this gave Lauren the peace that she needed to feel comfortable in the space of the relationship. And then it gave David time to reflect, to make sure that he wasn't making an emotional decision. And Mark, I have to mention, this reminds me of the acronym HALT that I also use. It has to do with emotional spending. It may not be a lot, but oftentimes I've taught my husband to do HALT before we go to a supermarket, or especially the supermarket. Never go to the supermarket or purchase anything, that you don't need when you're hungry, anxious, lonely, or tired.
Exactly.
So when I think of pause in that process, is similar to the HALT method.
Yes.
So I'll also add the second one. So we said pause. So the second P is process. So we coach them on identifying the emotions behind the financial decisions. This is a layer of understanding that most people never even get to. And we make sure that our Flex clients really, truly understand this. And hopefully all of you are going to get this from this conversation. David was able to realize that he spent more when he felt invisible. That was a huge breakthrough. He realized that, when he didn't feel seen, which again caused that sense of control, that needing for control, that's when his emotions stirred up and the spending happened. And then Lauren realized that she shut down when she felt out of control. It just shut down, which impacted her confidence. So you can only imagine, like, right, Mark, we know just how the friction that was going on before this process, and how being able to pause and process what was going on, process the emotions behind the financial decisions, just the impact that it made on their relationship alone.
Yeah, I mean, nailed it.
Right.
I mean, just, we're talking about creating legacy, and, money is just a tool to allow us to hit those goals. And yet communication is so important, and being able to understand each other. So, Marcella, I can't emphasize the importance of the core value assessment, and just how critical it is to give each other, to give me an insight of our clients, to give couples an insight, to give individuals an insight of how they process. It's literally like, this is what I tell Marcella. I say this all the time, right? But when I don't have someone's core values, it's like I'm talking to someone blind. Like, I don't know who you are, because I don't see your values. And too many times we're making decisions and we're not even aware of our values. So I'm just adding a little caveat there, because it's important to understand, before you can even make a value-based decision, you got to know your values, right?
Right.
And so in this case of Lauren and David, it's even more important that they come together with their values and create a family unit, because then you're able to have these conversations and apply the 3 Ps, which I'm going to bring in the third one here, which is practice. So together, they came together with their values to create or build a roadmap. Now, I want to be clear here. They didn't just create a budget. And I know for some people that could be a taboo word. It could be a stressor. And my thought behind that is, okay, well, why is it a stressor? And usually there's an underlining experience that comes with that, right? And it could be a negative experience that takes this word and makes it a trigger. But, for Marcella and I, this is what we do. We look at it as an empowering word. Because what it's really doing is creating a actually I was going to say strategy, but what it's really doing is creating a capital strategy, right? Rooted in their shared values. And there's a big difference between a budget and thinking about that mindset, and a capital strategy. I don't care what you call it, but we want to make sure that it's an intentional plan, so that you and your partner, you and your family, whatever that unit is driving forward. So in their case here, it wasn't just about, oh, we have to stop spending. No, it was about starting to communicate with one another. For Lauren, she became more confident because she could finally understand what their money was doing, their purpose for money. And for David, he stopped feeling like he had to buy joy for himself. He didn't have to do that anymore, right? Or at least understand what was that driving force, and now take control over it. And Marcella, that's what this is all about. It's helping individuals take control of their finances, so now they can be aligned either with themselves or as a family unit to get to their financial goal. Especially for our clients, when it comes to legacy building, it's so important you set the foundation today by having that solid financial foothold with you and your money.
That's so important. And again, the capital strategy, just as a reminder, it is the C in our legacy pregame framework.
Yes.
So making sure that was a part, because they went through a lot of the other parts of the framework in this conversation, whether you realize it or not, especially hitting on emotional mastery. The E in the legacy framework was a huge part of what we're talking about today. But it does impact the legacy lens and all of that. But Mark, with all that you just shared, and with Lauren and David and that outcome, this is the part that I just love to see. You take them through this process, and then bam, the transformation is there. We talked about the transformation in themselves, in their relationship. So they went from a place where they struggled to understand each other, to communicate about money. There were just so many the tiny micro situations that are embedded in the complications around money communication within a relationship, right? So they started off there, and now they're able to sit down once a month, and they are able to accomplish what we encourage them to do, which we call a legacy check-in. They check in every month. They look at their financial plan together. They check that capital strategy to make sure it's in check. And as they do, they found their sweet spot. Lauren tracks the numbers, and David tracks the vision.
Yeah,
That's
so
a beautiful thing.
they're working together here so that financial intelligence is now in action, right? So money decisions, Marcella, it's so amazing, right? We think about money and we were like, okay, well, all these issues we're having is because we're not making enough money. We're spending too much money in a simple view here. But money decisions is never just about money, right? It's
No,
never just about the money.
absolutely not. It is never just about money. Money decisions are often about the meaning behind it. And you've heard us say that over and over again, right, Mark? They're always hearing us saying the meaning behind the money, the meaning behind the money. It is about the emotions, the history behind it, and the identity. That is what really drives our money decisions: emotions, our history, and our identity, how we see ourselves through it. And so, Mark, as we wrap up here, I want to just talk to the listeners. If today's episode had you saying to yourself, I know what I should do with money, but I just feel stuck, then just pause, take a breath, and know that you're not alone. You're just between financial literacy and financial intelligence. That's where you are right now. And we want to do something about that, right, Mark?
Yeah. I think that it's so important that we understand that that's why we're here. This is why we are presenting on this Legacy, the Pregame Podcast, and just understanding that. Look at Lauren and David, for example, right? That coming together, understanding that it's not just about they need to make more money. No, they just need to be more intentional when it comes to their money and their financial decisions, right? They went from avoidance to alignment. They went from financial stress to a financial strategy that they could both be on board with that aligns to their values. And again, we talked about Lauren and we talked about David in a couple environment, but it does not just apply to couples. It can be the individual that are making decisions that are not aligned to your values, or you're highly emotional and you can't take control of your value-based decisions, or you don't even know your values. So I don't want to limit this conversation solely to just couples. No, it's for any individual, young, old, single, divorced, doesn't matter. Any couple, any person that is looking to take control of their legacy, it will take control of their legacy by first taking care of their finances, by first understanding who they are as an individual. And this is where Marcella and I come in, understanding your values, right? So this is not a DIY system here. You need a coach like Marcella, you need a coach like myself to come in so that you can get an understanding of who you are and your values. We all have values, but until you discover them, you're literally making decisions blindly or just with a gut feeling. But when you have it typed out, when you have it plastered on your mirror or wherever you want to keep it in front of you, so you always have that reminder of my values. Now you're being held accountable. You're holding yourself accountable. You're holding your family accountable to those values. And that is something you really want because it is a game changer. So, Marcella, what can they do to get connected so that they can first discover their values and start the process of getting control of their emotional decisions to now make value-based decisions?
Yes. So let's talk about your next move, which is the why in our Legacy Pregame framework. We could always start with going to the legacypregamepodcast.com to download your complimentary Legacy Clarity Workbook. It's right there. You can get started there. And again, if you are really looking for the support, the guidance, the coaching, the hand-holding to get you from financial literacy to financial intelligence, then contact us directly. You can find all the information you need to reach out to us in the show notes below. So until then, live well, build wisely,
and prepare with purpose.